The Alpha of Silver Lake thought he was just kicking a worthless vagrant out of his territory. He laughed as the man froze in the snow, completely unaware that this Beggar was actually Gabriel Stone, the Alpha King of the entire continent. But while the pack showed cruelty, one starving servant girl saw a human being. She risked her life to give him her only piece of bread. Today, we're telling the story of how that single act of kindness destroyed a corrupt empire and turned a servant into a queen. This is the Alpha King, disguised as a beggar. You won't believe the revenge that's coming. The wind in Montana didn't just blow, it bit. It had teeth, sharp and icy, tearing through the thin layers of clothing Gabriel Stone wore. To the world, Gabriel was the Alpha King, the ruler of all 13 territories, a man whose net worth was calculated in billions and whose combat prowess was legendary. But tonight, on the outskirts of the Silver Lake territory, he was nobody. He wore a coat that smelled of stale beer and gasoline. His beard was matted with artificial grime, and he walked with a limp he had practiced for weeks. He wasn't doing this for fun. Reports had reached the Royal Council of Corruption in Silver Lake, reports of funds meant for the pack's orphanage being stolen, and lower-ranking wolves being treated like slaves. Gabriel needed to see the truth with his own eyes. He shuffled toward the massive iron gates of the pack house. It was a sprawling estate that looked more like a modern fortress, with high walls and security cameras buzzing in the cold air. As he reached the intercom, a sleek black Range Rover pulled up to the gate. The window rolled down. The heat blasting from inside the car hit Gabriel's face, a cruel reminder of the warmth he was being denied. "Get out of the way, trash," a voice sneered. It was Alpha Connor. Gabriel recognized him from the dossiers. Connor was handsome in a slimy way, wearing a tailored Italian suit that cost more than most families made in a year. Beside him sat Tiffany, his Luna, checking her makeup in the visor mirror. "Please, sir," Gabriel rasped, pitching his voice to sound weak. "I just need a place to sleep. The shelter in town is full. I'm one of your kind. I'm a wolf without a pack." Tiffany laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated on Gabriel's enhanced hearing. "One of us? Look at him, Connor. He smells like something died in a dumpster. If he's a wolf, he's a disgrace to the species." "We don't run a charity for strays," Connor spat. He revved the engine of the Range Rover. "Move, or I'll run you over. And trust me, the police in this town work for me. They won't even file a report." Gabriel didn't move immediately. He looked Connor in the eye, searching for a shred of decency, a flicker of the alpha instinct to protect the weak. There was nothing, only arrogance. Connor honked the horn, a deafening blast. Gabriel stumbled back, feigning fear, falling into a snowbank. The gate opened and the Range Rover sped through, kicking up a spray of dirty slush that coated Gabriel's face. As the taillights disappeared up the long driveway, Gabriel wiped the slush from his cheek. His eyes, usually a warm hazel, flashed a dangerous gold. Strike one, he thought. He waited 10 minutes before slipping through a gap in the perimeter fence he'd identified earlier. He made his way toward the back of the estate, where the kitchens were located. The smell of roasting beef and rosemary wafted out, making his stomach rumble for real. He hadn't eaten in 2 days to stay in character. He found a spot near the heavy metal dumpsters, huddled against the brick wall to block the wind. He curled up, pulling his tattered coat tight. Suddenly, the heavy metal door creaked open. Gabriel tensed, ready to be kicked out again. A girl stepped out. She couldn't have been more than 22. She was thin, too thin. Her uniform, a grey maid's dress, was 2 sizes too big, hanging off her frail frame. Her hair, a light brown colour, was pulled back in a messy bun. and she had dark circles under her eyes that spoke of exhaustion. This was Sarah Miller, the Omega. She was carrying a heavy black trash bag. She heaved it into the dumpster with a grunt of effort, then paused, wiping her hands on her apron. She looked up and froze when she saw Gabriel huddled in the shadows. Gabriel prepared for the scream. He prepared for her to call security. Instead, Sarah's eyes widened. She didn't look at him with disgust. She looked at him with recognition. She knew what it felt like to be cold. "You can't be here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "If Alpha Connor sees you, he'll have the guards beat you." "I have nowhere else to go, miss," Gabriel said, keeping his head down. "I'm starving." Sarah bit her lip. She looked back at the door, then at the camera mounted above it. She moved casually, positioning her body to block the camera's view of Gabriel. "Wait here," she whispered. "Don't move, and for God's sake, stay quiet." She slipped back inside. Gabriel waited. A minute later, she returned. She wasn't carrying leftovers or trash. In her hands, wrapped in a paper napkin, was a bread roll. It wasn't fresh. It was the heel of a loaf, slightly hard, and a small wedge of cheddar cheese. "It's not much," Sarah said, crouching down. She didn't throw the food at him. She handed it to him. Her fingers brushed his, and Gabriel felt a spark, a static shock that had nothing to do with the dry winter air. He looked at the food. "Is this yours?" Sarah looked away. "I'm not hungry tonight." Gabriel's wolf senses were screaming at him. He could hear her stomach growling from 3 feet away. She was lying. She was giving him her own dinner. "Why?" Gabriel asked, breaking character for a split second. His voice was stronger, deeper. "Why help me? The Alpha said I was trash." Sarah smiled, but it was a sad, broken smile. "Because I know what it's like to be invisible," she said softly. "Eat quickly. Then you have to go. Head south toward the old barn on Route 93. It's abandoned, but the roof is intact. You won't freeze there." She stood up, shivering in the cold air. "Go, please." She turned and ran back inside, the door clicking shut behind her. Gabriel stared at the bread in his hand. It was hard, cold, and meager. But to him, in that moment, it was the most valuable meal he had ever been served. He took a bite. As he chewed, he looked up at the towering mansion where music was starting to play for a dinner party. Sarah Miller, he mentally noted the name. You just saved your pack. But Connor is going to pay. Inside the warm, bustling kitchen, Sarah leaned against the closed door, trying to stop her hands from shaking. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. "Sarah!" The shriek made her jump. It was Tiffany, the Luna. She was standing in the doorway of the kitchen, wearing a shimmering red evening gown, holding an empty wine glass. "Where is the reserve vintage?" Tiffany demanded, her eyes narrowing. "And why are you just standing there? The Alpha's guests are empty." I was just taking out the trash, Luna Tiffany," Sarah stammered, hurrying to the wine rack. "You're useless," Tiffany sneered, stepping into the kitchen. She grabbed Sarah's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the soft flesh. "And you smell like outside. Like dirt." Tiffany sniffed the air, frowning. Then she looked at the counter where Sarah's meager dinner portion had been sitting just minutes ago. It was gone. "Where is your rations?" Tiffany asked suspiciously. "I ate it, Luna," Sarah lied, keeping her eyes on the floor. "You ate it that fast?" Tiffany's eyes darted to the back door. She was cruel, but she wasn't stupid. She walked to the door and threw it open. Sarah's blood ran cold. "Please be gone. Please be gone." Tiffany looked out into the darkness. She saw footprints in the snow leading away from the door, and crumbs on the ground where Gabriel had eaten the bread. She slammed the door shut and turned to Sarah with a predatory grin. "You were feeding a stray, weren't you? Feeding vermin with our food?" "It was my food," Sarah protested, shrinking back. "It was my share." "Everything in this house belongs to the pack," a deep voice boomed from the hallway. Alpha Connor walked in. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He loosened his tie, his face flushed with wine and anger. "What is she doing now, Tiff?" "Feeding that beggar we saw at the gate," Tiffany said, crossing her arms. "Giving him our supplies." Connor sighed, rolling his neck. "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. We took you in when your parents died in that car crash. We gave you a roof, a job. And this is how you repay us? By inviting security risks onto my property?" "He was hungry, Alpha," Sarah whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "He was just a man." "He was a test," Connor said, walking closer. "And you failed." He didn't shout. He didn't scream. That was what made Connor terrifying. He was calm. He reached out and grabbed a pitcher of ice water sitting on the counter. "You like the cold so much? You like helping the freezing trash?" Before Sarah could move, Connor threw the water over her. The shock was instant. The water soaked her thin uniform, plastering it to her skin. In the warm kitchen, it was humiliating. But Connor wasn't done. "Get out," he said calmly. "You can spend the night in the shed. Think about loyalty while you freeze. If you come back into the main house before sunrise, you're banished. And you know what happens to a rogue Omega without a pack." Banishment was a death sentence. Sarah didn't argue. She knew it would only make it worse. Shivering violently, water dripping from her hair, she walked out the back door into the biting Montana night. Gabriel hadn't gone to the barn on Route 93. He had circled back. He was watching from the ridge, using a pair of high-tech thermal binoculars he had pulled from a hidden cache in his boot. He saw the heat signature of the girl being shoved out the back door. He saw her collapse onto the snow, hugging her knees, shivering. His grip on the binoculars tightened until the plastic cracked. The anger he felt wasn't the hot, explosive rage of a young wolf. It was the cold, calculating fury of a king. He pulled a satellite phone from his pocket. It was encrypted, linked directly to the Royal Guard. He dialed a single number. "This is Stone," Gabriel said. His voice was devoid of emotion, deadly calm. "Your Majesty?" The voice on the other end was Vance, the head of the Royal Guard. "We didn't expect a check-in for another 2 days. Is the reconnaissance complete?" "The reconnaissance is over," Gabriel said, watching Sarah drag herself toward the uninsulated gardening shed. "The Silver Lake pack is compromised. The Alpha is unfit. The Luna is complicit." "Understood, sir." "Shall we send a strike team?" "No," Gabriel said. "That's too easy. I don't just want to remove him. I want to destroy him. I want him to lose everything in front of the very people he terrorizes." "What are your orders, Majesty?" Gabriel watched the lights of the mansion, hearing the laughter of the party inside. "Initiate Protocol 7. Send an official royal summons. Announce the Grand Winter Ball. Every Alpha in the region is required to attend. Tell them the king is coming to choose a new regional commander." Vance paused on the line. "But sir, you are the king. You're already there." "They don't know that," Gabriel said darkly. "Connor thinks he's royalty. Let's see how he acts when he thinks he's about to get a promotion. And the girl, sir? The asset?" Gabriel looked at the shed one last time. He wanted to run down there, wrap her in his coat, and take her away right now. But he couldn't blow his cover yet. If he saved her now, she would be a fugitive. If he waited, he could make her a queen. "Protect her," Gabriel ordered. "Put a shadow detail on her. If Connor or anyone touches her again, kill them, but stay out of sight. I need her at that ball." "Understood." Gabriel hung up. He stood on the snowy ridge, the wind whipping his beggar's coat. "Hang on, Sarah," he whispered into the wind. "Just 2 more days. Then you'll never be cold again." The next morning broke with a deceptive calm. The sun glinted off the snowdrifts, blindingly white, but the temperature hovered near 0. Sarah had survived the night in the shed only because she had found a pile of old burlap sacks to burrow under. She woke up stiff, her joints aching, her throat raw. She waited until the sun was fully up before daring to creep back into the kitchen. The house was in chaos. Usually the mornings were quiet until Alpha Connor woke up at 10, but today servants were running back and forth, carrying steamers and polishing silver. "You, Sarah!" It was Jessica, the head housekeeper, a stout woman who followed Tiffany's orders blindly. "Don't just stand there looking like a drowned rat. Get changed. We have work to do." "What's happening?" Sarah rasped, her voice hoarse. "A royal courier just left," Jessica said, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. "The king, King Gabriel Stone himself. He's hosting a grand winter ball at the regional hotel in 2 days." Sarah froze. The king? The Alpha King was a myth to people like her. He lived in the capital, thousands of miles away. "Why here?" Sarah asked. "Who cares why?" Jessica snapped. "The invitation says he is looking to appoint a new Prime Alpha for the Northern Territories. Connor is convinced it's him." Sarah felt a knot of dread in her stomach. If Connor became a Prime Alpha, his power would extend over 3 states. He wouldn't just be a tyrant to Silver Lake. He would be a tyrant to thousands. "Move!" Jessica shoved a pile of linens into Sarah's arms. For the next 2 days, the house was a war zone. Tiffany spent thousands of dollars on a custom gold dress. Connor practiced his speeches in the mirror, yelling at anyone who interrupted him. Sarah worked until her fingers bled. She scrubbed the floors, polished Connor's shoes, and ironed Tiffany's dress. She was invisible, a ghost in the machine of their ambition. But strange things started happening. When she took the trash out to the dumpster, where she had met the beggar, she found a small, hot thermos of soup sitting on the lid. No note. Just hot soup. The next day, when she was chopping wood outside, she felt like she was being watched. But not in a creepy way, in a protective way. When she slipped on the ice, she felt a gust of wind, almost like someone had reached out to catch her. But when she looked around, the yard was empty. Finally, the night of the ball arrived. The limousine was waiting in the driveway. Connor looked dashing in a tuxedo, though his eyes were cruel. Tiffany looked like a movie star. "Everyone gets in the vans," Connor shouted to the pack members. "I want a full entourage. We need to look powerful." He turned to Sarah, who was standing by the door, holding Tiffany's fur coat. "You too, rat," Connor said. Sarah blinked. "Me? Alpha?" "We need someone to hold Tiffany's purse and fetch drinks," Connor sneered. "You're coming, but stay in the shadows. If you embarrass me in front of the king, I will kill you myself." Sarah nodded, keeping her head down. She was given a plain black dress, essentially a uniform, that blended into the background. They drove to the regional hotel, a massive Gothic structure lit up with thousands of fairy lights. Luxury cars lined the driveway. The paparazzi were there, flashing cameras. As Sarah stepped out of the van, the noise was deafening. She followed Connor and Tiffany, keeping 10 paces behind as ordered. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers, a live orchestra, and tables laden with caviar and champagne. But the atmosphere was tense. Every alpha from the region was there. posturing, trying to look important. At the far end of the room stood a throne. It was empty. "Where is he?" Connor muttered, checking his watch. "The king should be here." Suddenly the trumpet sounded. The room went dead silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," the royal announcer boomed, "His Majesty, King Gabriel Stone." The heavy velvet curtains behind the throne parted. Sarah held her breath. She craned her neck to see. A man stepped forward. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark hair. He wore a black military-style tuxedo with gold accents. He radiated power, an aura so strong that some of the weaker wolves actually lowered their heads instinctively. He scanned the room. His face was stern, unreadable. Sarah gasped. She covered her mouth with her hand, dropping Tiffany's purse. The king, the jawline, the eyes, even the way he stood. It was clean-shaven. It was dressed in thousands of dollars of silk. But she knew those eyes. It was the beggar. It was the man she had fed bread to in the alley. And he wasn't looking at the crowd. He wasn't looking at Connor. King Gabriel Stone was looking directly at her. The silence in the grand ballroom was heavy, suffocating. It was the kind of silence that usually preceded a gunshot. King Gabriel Stone descended the marble staircase, one slow, deliberate step at a time. The spotlight followed him, reflecting off the gold threading in his jacket. Every eye in the room, over 300 of the most powerful wolves on the continent, was fixed on him. At the bottom of the stairs, Alpha Connor straightened his bow tie. He puffed out his chest, a smug grin plastered on his face. He elbowed Tiffany. "I told you," Connor whispered, barely moving his lips. "Look at him. He's walking straight toward us. He knows strength when he sees it. Get ready to curtsy, but don't look desperate." Sarah, standing in the shadows behind Tiffany, felt the urge to vomit. She wanted to run, to hide under the tables, to disappear. "He knows," she thought, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "He knows I saw him in the dirt. He's going to punish me for witnessing his weakness." She lowered her head, staring at the polished toes of Connor's shoes. Gabriel reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, leaving a wide aisle directly to the Silver Lake delegation. Connor stepped forward, extending his hand. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice oozing practiced charm. "Welcome to the Northern Territory. I am Alpha Connor, and this is my Luna Tiffany. We are honored that you chose." Gabriel didn't stop. He didn't slow down. He didn't even blink. He walked right past Connor's extended hand as if the Alpha were a piece of furniture. Connor's smile froze. His hand remained in the air, grasping at nothing but embarrassment. A ripple of confused murmurs spread through the room. Gabriel stopped 3 feet behind them. He stopped directly in front of Sarah. Sarah was trembling so hard the sequins on the cheap black dress they had forced her to wear were shimmering. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the blow, waiting for him to order the guards to drag her away. "Look at me," a deep voice commanded. It wasn't the voice of the beggar. It was the voice of command, a baritone that vibrated in her chest. Sarah slowly lifted her head. Up close, he was devastating. Clean-shaven, his jaw was sharp enough to cut glass. His eyes, the color of molten gold, were locked onto hers. There was no anger in them. There was intensity. "You're shaking," Gabriel said softly. I'm sorry, Your Majesty," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "You didn't know I was a king," Gabriel said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "And yet you gave me your only meal. You risked your safety to feed a stranger who had nothing to offer you in return." Gabriel reached out, his hand large and warm, took hers. His skin was rough, a warrior's skin, but his touch was incredibly gentle. "Alpha Connor," Gabriel said, without turning around. Connor spun around, his face a mask of shock and red-hot anger. "Your Majesty, that is just the help. She's an Omega, a servant." "Is she?" Gabriel asked. He rubbed his thumb over Sarah's knuckles, sending a jolt of electricity up her arm. "Because 2 nights ago, at your gates, I met a lot of wolves. I met an alpha who tried to run me over. I met a Luna who laughed at a freezing man, and I met a girl who blocked a security camera to save a beggar's life." The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Tiffany's face went pale. She recognized the story instantly. "She disobeyed orders," Connor blurted out, trying to salvage the situation. "She jeopardized the security of the pack house. I was going to discipline her. You threw water on her," Gabriel interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "And you made her sleep in a shed in sub-zero temperatures." Gabriel finally turned his head, looking over his shoulder at Connor. The gold in his eyes flared brighter, the sign of his wolf rising to the surface. "In my kingdom, Alpha Connor, a leader is defined by how he treats the lowest among him. You treated a king like a dog, and she treated a beggar like a king." Gabriel turned back to Sarah. He released her hand only to unbutton his tuxedo jacket. With smooth, fluid motions, he took it off. He draped the heavy, silk-lined jacket over Sarah's shoulders. It was warm, smelling of cedar and rain, and it swallowed her small frame. "This is not a servant," Gabriel announced to the room. "Tonight, she is my guest of honor." He offered his arm to her. "Miss Miller, may I have this dance?" Sarah stared at him. Her brain had stopped working. This was a fairy tale, but it felt terrifyingly real. I don't know how to waltz, Your Majesty." Gabriel smiled, a genuine, breathtaking smile that transformed his face. "Then just hold on to me. I won't let you fall." The orchestra, sensing the cue, began to play a slow, sweeping melody. Gabriel led Sarah to the center of the floor. As they moved, the crowd scrambled to get out of the way, forming a wide circle around them. Sarah felt lightheaded. The jacket was heavy on her shoulders, a shield against the world. She placed her hand on Gabriel's shoulder, and he pulled her close, his hand resting respectfully but firmly on her waist. "Breathe," Gabriel whispered as they began to sway. "You're turning blue." "They're all staring," Sarah whispered back, her eyes darting around the room. She saw the envy on the women's faces, the shock on the men's. But mostly, she saw the murderous rage radiating from Connor and Tiffany on the sidelines. "Let them stare," Gabriel said. "Let them see what they ignored." "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked, looking up at him. "It was just a piece of bread." "It was everything," Gabriel corrected her. "Sarah, I have traveled to 12 territories in the last 6 months. I have been spat on, kicked, and ignored by hundreds of wolves. You are the only one who stopped. That kind of heart. It's rare. It's royal." He spun her gently. For a moment, Sarah forgot the fear. She forgot the hunger and the cold shed. She felt safe. For the first time in her life, she felt seen. But on the sidelines, the spell was breaking. Connor was pacing like a caged tiger. He downed a glass of champagne in one gulp and slammed the glass onto a waiter's tray. "He's humiliating me," Connor hissed, "in front of the entire council. My reputation is ruined." "We have to do something," Tiffany whispered, her nails digging into her palms. "If he takes her, if she tells him everything about the orphanage funds, about the way we run the mines, we're dead, Connor. We'll be executed for treason." Connor's eyes narrowed. He watched the king spin the servant girl. He saw the way Gabriel looked at her, protective, possessive. "He wants her," Connor realized. A twisted idea began to form in his mind. He wants her, but he's a king. He has to follow the law. "What are you talking about?" Tiffany asked. "Protocol," Connor said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "The king is the guardian of the law. He can't break it, or he loses the respect of the council. And by Silver Lake Pack law, Sarah is an indentured servant. Her parents died with massive debts to the pack. She is legally my property until that debt is paid." "But the king can just pay it," Tiffany argued. "Not if she's a criminal," Connor said softly. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was his grandfather's signet ring, a heavy platinum band with a black diamond. It was priceless, an heirloom of the Silver Lake Alpha line. "Take this," Connor whispered, pressing the ring into Tiffany's hand. "Go to the bathroom. Find her coat in the cloakroom, or wait until she comes off the floor. Plant it on her." "You want to frame her?" "I want to destroy her," Connor said. "If she's a thief, the king can't take her. He can't mate with a felon. He'll have to hand her back to me for judgment. And once I have her back in the Silver Lake cells, she'll never speak again." Tiffany grinned. She slipped the ring into her bodice and disappeared into the crowd. On the dance floor, the song ended. Gabriel bowed to Sarah, and she curtsied clumsily, her face flushed pink. "I need a drink of water," Sarah said, feeling overwhelmed. "I'll get it for you," Gabriel said. "Stay here, don't move." He stepped away toward the bar. It was a mistake. The moment Gabriel's back was turned, Tiffany lunged. She didn't approach Sarah aggressively. She bumped into her, seemingly by accident, spilling a glass of red wine down the front of the king's jacket that Sarah was wearing. "Oh, you clumsy idiot!" Tiffany shrieked, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. I didn't move," Sarah stammered, backing away. "Let me help you clean it," Tiffany said, her voice dripping with fake concern. She grabbed the lapel of the jacket, dabbing at it with a napkin. In the confusion, her other hand slipped into the deep side pocket of the tuxedo jacket. She dropped the heavy platinum ring inside. "Get away from me," Sarah said, pushing Tiffany back. "What is going on here?" Gabriel was back. He loomed over them, a glass of water in his hand. He saw the wine stain on his jacket, and his eyes darkened. "She ran right into me, Your Majesty," Tiffany lied smoothly. "I think she's drunk." "I am not," Sarah cried. "Enough," Gabriel said. "Sarah, come with me. We are leaving." "Stop!" Connor stepped into the circle. He was flanked by 4 of his largest security guards. He looked confident now, his chest puffed out. "You cannot leave with her, Your Majesty," Connor announced loudly. Gabriel turned slowly. The air around him began to vibrate with power. "Are you giving me an order, Alpha?" "I am enforcing the law," Connor said, raising his voice so the council members at the back could hear. "That girl is an indentured servant of Silver Lake. She has a debt. She cannot leave the territory without my permission, and I do not grant it." "I will pay her debt," Gabriel said dismissively. "Name the price." "It's not just about money," Connor said, stepping closer. "It's about justice. My grandfather's signet ring went missing this morning, a priceless artifact of our pack history." He pointed a shaking finger at Sarah. "She was the only one cleaning the master bedroom today. I believe she stole it." A gasp went through the room. "That is a lie," Gabriel said coldly. "She has been with me or in your sight all night." "Then you won't mind if we search her," Connor challenged. "If she is innocent, the king has nothing to fear. But if she is a thief, surely the king wouldn't harbor a criminal." It was a trap, a perfect political trap. If Gabriel refused the search, he looked like he was abusing his power to protect a favorite. If he agreed, Connor knew the result. Gabriel looked at Sarah. Did you take anything, Sarah?" "No." Sarah was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I swear I never took anything." Gabriel looked at Connor. "Search her pockets, but do it yourself. If you touch her inappropriately, you lose a hand." Connor smirked. He walked up to Sarah. He didn't check her dress. He reached straight into the pocket of the king's jacket she was wearing. He pulled out the platinum ring. He held it up to the light. The black diamond sparkled under the chandeliers. "A thief," Connor announced triumphantly, "caught red-handed, stealing from her alpha while wearing the king's clothes." The crowd murmured. The mood shifted instantly. Compassion turned to suspicion. "She's a thief," someone whispered. "Just a common criminal." Sarah stared at the ring in horror. I don't know how that got there." Connor grabbed Sarah's arm, hard. "By the laws of the council, a thief is subject to the judgment of her alpha. She comes with me." He pulled her. "Let her go," Gabriel said. His voice was quiet, but the floorboard seemed to rattle. "You can't stop me, Your Majesty," Connor gloated. "Not without breaking the Great Treaty. You wrote the laws yourself. Jurisdiction over internal crimes belongs to the Pack Alpha. Unless you want to declare war on the traditions of our people over a servant girl?" It was the ultimate checkmate. Connor was using the king's own laws against him. Gabriel looked at Sarah. He saw the terror in her eyes. He saw the bruising starting to form where Connor was gripping her arm. He looked at the ring. He knew it was a setup, but he had no proof. "I demand a trial by combat," Gabriel said. The room froze. Connor laughed. "For a servant? You can't be serious. You, the king, want to fight me for a maid?" "No," Gabriel said. He unbuttoned his cuffs, rolling up his sleeves to reveal muscular forearms, scarred from wars long past. "I am not fighting you as the king." Gabriel stepped forward, his eyes glowing so bright they looked like dual suns. "I am claiming her as my mate." The collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. "And as her mate," Gabriel growled, his voice shifting into a partial roar, "I am challenging you for the safety of my female. Protocol doesn't apply. Rank doesn't apply. Only blood." Gabriel pointed at Connor. "You touched what is mine. Now, you bleed." The ballroom floor was cleared in seconds. Tables were overturned, crystal glasses shattering on the floor as the terrified guests scrambled against the walls. They formed a wide, trembling circle. In the center stood two men. Alpha Connor stripped off his tuxedo jacket, revealing a powerful, hulking frame. He rolled his neck, cracking the vertebrae loud enough to echo in the silent hall. He looked confident. To him, Gabriel Stone was a politician, a man who sat on a throne in the capital signing treaties, not a warrior who bloodied his knuckles. Connor was in his prime, a fighter who maintained his position through brutality. "You made a mistake, Majesty," Connor sneered, his eyes bleeding into a muddy red, the sign of a corrupted alpha. "You might be the king of the paperwork, but in the ring, you're just meat. I'm going to tear your throat out and claim self-defense. The council will back me when they see how weak you are." Gabriel stood perfectly still. He didn't take off his shirt. He didn't even raise his fists. He just watched Connor with that unsettling, golden stare. "Sarah," Gabriel said calmly, not looking away from his opponent. "Close your eyes." "No," Sarah whispered from the edge of the circle, clutching the king's jacket tight around her. "I want to watch." Connor roared. It wasn't a human sound. He lunged, covering the 20 feet between them in a blur of speed. His fingernails elongated into jagged claws, aiming straight for Gabriel's jugular. The crowd screamed. But Gabriel wasn't there. With a movement too fast for the human eye to track, Gabriel sidestepped. As Connor flew past, Gabriel didn't strike him. He simply extended a foot and tripped him. Connor crashed face first into the marble floor, sliding 10 feet and knocking over a flower arrangement. Laughter rippled through the crowd. It was a humiliating start. Connor scrambled up, his face red with humiliation and blood from a split lip. "You think this is a game?" "I think you are a child throwing a tantrum," Gabriel replied coolly. "Is this how you fight? Flailing like a drowning rat?" Connor screamed in rage. This time he didn't charge blindly. He feinted left, then swung a massive right hook aimed at Gabriel's temple. It was a killing blow. Gabriel caught the fist. He didn't block it. He caught it. The sound of flesh hitting flesh was like a gunshot. Gabriel's hand wrapped around Connor's fist, stopping the momentum dead. The shockwave of the impact blew Gabriel's hair back, but his feet didn't move an inch. Connor's eyes widened in pure terror. He pulled, trying to free his hand, but Gabriel's grip was like a steel vice. "You ruled through fear," Gabriel said, his voice dropping to a growl that vibrated the chandeliers above. "You starved your people, you stole from orphans, and you abused the woman I have chosen." Snap. Gabriel crushed his hand. The sound of Connor's metacarpals grinding to dust was sickening. Connor shrieked, dropping to his knees. "Tiffany!" Connor screamed. "Do it! Now!" The twist came from the sidelines. Tiffany, seeing her husband failing, pulled a small, illegal silver oxide pistol from her clutch. It was a coward's weapon, banned by the treaties. She aimed it at Gabriel's back. "Look out!" Sarah screamed. Sarah didn't think. She didn't calculate. She saw the gun and she threw herself forward. She tackled Tiffany just as the trigger was pulled. Bang! The bullet went wide, shattering a mirror behind the bar. Sarah and Tiffany wrestled on the floor, a tangle of silk and fury. Tiffany was stronger, well-fed and trained, but Sarah was fighting with the desperation of someone who had nothing left to lose. Gabriel heard the shot. His head snapped toward Sarah. The sight of his mate in danger shattered his control. The king disappeared. The monster emerged. He didn't just let go of Connor's broken hand. He grabbed Connor by the throat, lifted him one-handed into the air and slammed him into the ground with enough force to crack the concrete foundation beneath the marble. Gabriel roared, a true Alpha King's roar. It was a sound of pure dominance that forced every wolf in the room, including the other alphas, to drop to their knees in submission. Gabriel turned toward Tiffany. She was pinning Sarah down, raising the gun for a second shot at point-blank range. "Drop it!" Gabriel used the voice, the command. It wasn't a request. It was a psychic hammer blow. Tiffany's brain short-circuited. Her body obeyed before her mind could process it. Her fingers went slack, and the gun clattered to the floor. She collapsed, weeping, overwhelmed by the sheer pressure of the king's aura. Gabriel walked over. He didn't run. He walked with the terrifying inevitability of death itself. He reached down and pulled Sarah up from the floor. He checked her quickly, hands cupping her face, scanning for injuries. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice shaking with adrenaline. "I'm okay," Sarah gasped, adrenaline flooding her veins. "I'm okay." Gabriel nodded. He turned back to the room. Connor was groaning on the floor, trying to crawl away. Tiffany was sobbing in a heap. Gabriel walked to the center of the room. He looked at the council members who were kneeling, heads bowed. "The Silver Lake Pack is compromised," Gabriel announced, his voice ringing like a bell. "Alpha Connor and Luna Tiffany are hereby stripped of their rank, their titles, and their assets. They are guilty of treason, theft, and attempted regicide." He looked down at Connor. "You wanted to banish Sarah?" Gabriel asked softly. "You wanted to send her out into the cold with nothing?" Gabriel ripped the expensive tuxedo jacket off Connor's back. He then reached down and tore the silk dress off Tiffany's shoulder, leaving her in her slip. "The punishment fits the crime," Gabriel declared. "You are rogues now. You are banished from all civilized territories. No pack will harbor you. No merchant will trade with you. You leave tonight with nothing but the clothes on your backs." "Please," Connor whimpered, clutching his broken hand. "It's snowing." "We'll freeze." Gabriel looked at him with zero sympathy. "Then I suggest you find a barn on Route 93. I hear the roof is still intact." He signaled to the Royal Guards who had just burst through the doors. "Get them out of my sight." As Connor and Tiffany were dragged out, kicking and screaming, into the bitter Montana night, the room remained silent. Gabriel turned to Sarah. He took the heavy, wine-stained jacket she was still clutching and draped it back over her shoulders properly. "Let's go home, Sarah," he said. "Home?" she asked. "To the servants' quarters?" Gabriel smiled, and for the first time that night his eyes were purely human. "No, to the palace. You have a kingdom to run." The snow was falling again. From the balcony of the royal palace, the capital city looked like a painting. It was a sprawling metropolis of golden lights and ancient stone, dusted in white. Sarah stood at the railing, wrapped in a robe made of the finest cashmere. It was warm, so incredibly warm. Even after 6 months, the sensation of constant warmth was something she couldn't get used to. For years, her body had been perpetually tense, braced against the drafts of the gardening shed or the chill of the unheated servants' quarters. Now, she lived in a world where cold was a choice, not a sentence. "You're out here again," a deep voice murmured behind her. Sarah turned. Gabriel was leaning against the glass doors of their private suite. He had shed the stiff military uniform he wore for council meetings and was dressed in simple dark trousers and a grey sweater. He looked less like a king and more like the man she had met by the dumpster, only cleaner, healthier, and looking at her with an intensity that still made her knees weak. "I still expect to wake up and find myself back there," Sarah admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Sometimes, when the wind howls at night, I panic. I think Alpha Connor is coming to bang on the door to yell at me for sleeping too long." Gabriel crossed the distance between them in 2 long strides. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her back against his solid chest. He rested his chin on the top of her head. "Connor is a ghost," Gabriel said firmly. "He has a bad memory. He can never touch you again. Look at me." He turned her around gently. His golden eyes searched hers. "You are not a servant, Sarah. You are the Lunar Queen. I watched you in the council chamber today. You debated the elders on the education budget, and you won. You didn't win because you're my mate. You won because you were right." Sarah smiled shyly. "I just remembered what it was like for the pup at Silver Lake. They didn't have books. I didn't want another generation to grow up thinking they were worthless just because they were poor." "And that," Gabriel said, kissing her forehead, "is why the people adore you. You lead with the one thing most alphas forget." "Strength? Empathy," Gabriel corrected. "Empathy is the hardest strength of all." A polite knock on the doorframe interrupted them. It was Vance, the captain of the Royal Guard. He looked hesitant to disturb them, holding a tablet in his hand. "Your Majesties," Vance bowed, "forgive the intrusion, but you asked for a weekly update on the exiled parties." The mood on the balcony shifted. The air grew colder. "Report," Gabriel commanded, his voice hardening. Vance tapped the screen. "Our border patrols in the desolate zones of North Dakota have spotted 2 rogues matching the description of the former Alpha Connor and Tiffany. The winter has been harsh this year. Reports state that they were found attempting to seek shelter in an abandoned mining outpost. Are they alive? Sarah asked. Barely, Vance said. The patrol indicated that the male, Connor, has lost 2 fingers to frostbite. He attempted to order the patrol to give him their vehicle, claiming he was a regional commander. The patrol, well, they laughed at him, Your Majesty. Gabriel's expression remained stony. And the female? Tiffany sold her remaining jewelry weeks ago for passage to a warmer city, but she was swindled, Vance explained. She was seen arguing with Connor over a can of beans. They turned on each other, Your Majesty. When the money ran out, so did their loyalty. They are traveling together only for survival, but they despise one another. Sarah looked out at the falling snow. She pictured them, the man who had worn Italian suits and the woman who had mocked her for smelling like dirt, now fighting over canned food in a freezing mine. It was the ultimate justice. They were living the exact life they had forced upon her. The patrol commander wants to know if they should intervene, Vance said. They are technically trespassing on royal mining land. We can arrest them and bring them to the dungeons. Gabriel looked at Sarah. It is your decision, my queen. You suffered the most at their hands. Say the word, and they will rot in a cell. Sarah thought about the bread. She thought about that night by the dumpster, how cold her hands had been, how desperate she was. She realized that hate was heavy. Carrying it around was exhausting. She didn't want to carry Connor and Tiffany anymore. She wanted to let them go. No dungeons, Sarah said softly. Vance looked surprised. Your Majesty? If we lock them up, we have to feed them. We have to clothe them. We give them a roof, Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. That is a mercy they don't deserve. Let them be free. Let them wander the world they created. Let them feel the wind and the hunger every single day. She looked up at Gabriel. Let them be nothing. Gabriel smiled, a fierce pride burning in his eyes. You heard the Queen. Order the patrol to stand down. Let them go. As you wish. Vance bowed and retreated, leaving them alone in the silence of the falling snow. Gabriel took Sarah's hand, lifting it to his lips. He kissed the ring finger where the royal signet now sat. Not a stolen ring, but her own. You are dangerous, Gabriel teased gently. That punishment is far worse than prison. I learned from the best, Sarah replied. She turned back to the city, to the millions of lights glowing in the dark. Gabriel? Yes, thank you. For what? The castle, the crown. For eating the bread, she whispered, for not walking away. Gabriel turned her face to his. Sarah, I spent 30 years looking for a home. I thought it was a place. I thought it was this palace. But I was wrong. He leaned in, his lips brushing hers. Home isn't a castle. Home is wherever you are. He kissed her, deep and slow, as the snow fell around them, sealing a promise that would last a lifetime. The beggar had found his treasure, and the servant girl had found her crown. And in the cold winds of North Dakota, 2 forgotten ghosts walked into the nothingness, a living reminder that in the end, you get exactly what you give. Wow. Talk about karma. Connor and Tiffany ended up fighting over beans in the cold, living the exact nightmare they forced onto Sarah. It really proves that the wheel always turns. Sometimes it just needs a little push from an alpha king. Sarah chose the ultimate revenge. She let them live with their failure while she thrived. It's a powerful lesson. True power isn't about how loud you can scream or how much money you have. It's about how you treat people when you think no one is watching. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Do you agree with Sarah's decision? Should she have thrown them in the dungeon, or was letting them survive as beggars the better punishment? I know what I would have done. If this story gave you chills, please hit that like button. It helps us create more long-form stories like this one. And make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Next week, we're dropping a story about a billionaire CEO who is rejected by his high school crush, only to become her boss 10 years later. You do not want to miss the drama. Thanks for watching, stay kind, and I'll see you in the next video.